Yep. Yeah, cool.
Grafton School District Board of Education meeting to order.
Ask all those present to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We've got two items on the consent agenda this evening. Approval of the minutes from the December 20th, 2021 board meeting and a statement of receipts and expenditures for December 2021. We have a motion to approve the consent agenda items.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, aye? Aye. Opposed, and it passes. Action items and reports.
Yes, we will start with Dr. Gunderson and his team. They've filled the audience tonight, which is exciting to see everyone here. I don't know if everyone that's here is speaking, but I know a number of them are, so we'll turn it over to Dr. Gunderson with Kennedy Elementary School.
All right, well, thank you for having me. I'm really happy to be here tonight, on a snowy January evening. My name is Craig Gunderson. For those of you who are online or perhaps new in the audience, I'm the principal at Kennedy. I've been the principal at Kennedy Elementary School since the 2014-15 school year. Our family lives in Grafton. We have 3 children in the Grafton School District at Woodview Elementary School. My wife Jenny is a physical therapist, and it's an honor to be here. It's a position that I dreamed about having one day, and it became a reality to me. And each year and each day it challenges me in new ways as we build community and put a great school together. So for tonight's presentation, we'll be focusing on a few things. We'll be looking at Kennedy Elementary School by the numbers. We'll look at Kennedy Elementary School in action over the course of the school year. We're going to do some featuring of staff members and students. We're happy to have them here this evening. And then finally, we'll have an opportunity for questions and continued discussions as needed. But getting into it, Kennedy Elementary School by the numbers. So if you look at these 3 different graphs that we have displayed, we have our enrollment by grade, and then also our average class size by year. You can see that with our enrollment by year, we're at our second highest since the new building opened several years ago with 459 students. Our enrollment across grade level varies. You can see those dips and those peaks across the different grade levels, especially at the lowest grades and the highest grades. And then our average class size has stayed pretty steady over the past 4 years. In fact, we're at 21.9 this year across our classrooms. That has stayed steady, the highest being 22.1 in the 18-19 school year at this mid-year point. For numbers also, we look at student achievement, our district dashboard, especially looking at reading and writing achievement. We've been looking hard at the 3rd grade reading scores, and our school has done a nice job partnering up with Woodview to work collaboratively to impact reading, writing, and learning. We have 4 big strategies in place as we look at our different grade levels and how we work with assessment and data, and then how we're impacting students and student learning through a new Lexia program. But I'm really proud of how our teams are working together on grade level reading plans, targeting skills in students, and trying to make an impact over time as we work with students in their different skill levels. It's an incredible journey, and I'm proud of our team leaders and each team member for holding up their end of the deal, working with student achievement and growth in reading. For Kennedy in Action, we have 6 new teachers this year. They're featured up here. In fact, we have a few of them in the audience this evening. We have Brandy Becker, kindergarten teacher. Brandy is here with her son, who will be reading with us this evening. We have Lindsay Berner, instructional coach. She's also joining us in the back. Jenny Fody, special education teacher. Annie Helmbrecht, a new music teacher. Stephanie Sally, 5th grade teacher. And we have Sarah Smith as a 3rd grade teacher. Very proud of each of them and happy and fortunate that they chose to come to Grafton. We chose each other, and they're doing a great job. The school year started off in great shape. In fact, we had great start conferences. Most of them occurred in person, a few joined online, but it was a great opportunity for us and our families to get to know each other and make that transition to school successful. Great start conferences led into the first days of school. The staff and students jumped right into learning with excitement. In fact, you can see some pictures of our teachers working with students at the rug and at their desks. Then also our cafeteria where students are together dining and enjoying themselves. There's lots of movement here. We're very fortunate because we have one-to-one iPads and Chromebooks throughout our school in grades 5K through 5th grade. We're enjoying second graders having one-to-one Chromebooks. The students are learning new skills, and these technology devices are trickling down into how we're impacting reading, writing, and math each day. In fact, the new Chromebooks are coming in very handy with our Lexia reading literacy resource that we've rolled out. And students are actively involved in this, using the devices and the updates that we have been fortunate to have. Our PTG has been active. In fact, we had a fall bash this year in early October, and we've been building community ever since. In fact, our PTG president is here tonight. I just saw her, Anna Siebert. We're fortunate to have her and an active PTG that runs events and really advocates for our school and our school district. And you can see collaboration and community in action, enjoying our beautiful outdoors. Homecoming was a huge success. Never before has the elementary level been so connected to Grafton High School. We got to attend the parade, and Mr. Manti, your parade leaders took off at racehorse speed. We could not even keep up to you. It was like a jog. But it was one of the first times that we had had a chance to walk with the high school, and it was awesome to see our younger students having the chance to walk and see what the upper grade levels are all about as well. We're also joined by GHS athletes and activity members, greeting the kids with high five as they came into school one morning. We had Mr. Brown and the band come as well during homecoming week. In fact, they performed for our students throughout the halls and then outdoors for a special private concert. Here you can see some young students sitting on the curb while Mr. Brown is directing them and playing, warming up for the big game. What I've enjoyed this year is the connection between our schools and also between our district. It seems like we're getting closer together with partnering on big events and working together. So whether it's different grade levels and schools working or our technology department working together with us, we feel pretty bonded and close to each other. We had a staff kickball game. We'll be talking more about school incentives in a little bit, but this was a top 5 moment of excitement for our entire school and school year, I would say. You can see the students who are lined up on the back drive, and you can see the ball's being pitched to Carly Waldorf, and she kicks a home run. And you can see her running around. It's almost a grand slam. And the students are jumping around and building that excitement. It's really fun when the students see staff in a different light, and we get to know each other at a deeper level. It builds trust, it builds community and excitement, and that's what we want to see here. We do have a blooper reel, which I will not be showing you. We are really enjoying our beautiful facilities. Kids are thriving in encore classes with art, music, FIAD, and library. It's an awesome opportunity for us to take tours with students and new families who visit our schools, to walk them through and to show them the new and enhanced spaces. It's a great feature of our schools, and even though we've been in it for several years, it still feels fresh, new, and we feel fortunate to be here. One great thing about Kennedy Elementary School is that we are strong with the textbooks, different learning resources of that nature, but then we also think outside of the box a little bit too. In fact, we have Mr. Perry working with 4th graders on the left with anemometers, measuring wind speed and graphing the wind speed on a very blustery day in December around the school grounds. Then you can see a 5th grade student working with some circuitry and coding with pumpkins of all things. But our school's doing a great job of bringing in resources and engaging students across a variety of levels. Our student council is quite active as well. In fact, we worked with Capco this year to partner up on the Kids to Kids toy drive. We raised more toys this year than we had in prior years. We were up 151 toys from the prior year. And it was through the generosity of our families and students that we were able to make a big impact in our community. As we got closer to the holidays, we had Mr. Arndt join us with his chamber singers, and we also found different ways to celebrate as well with other grade levels. For example, the kindergarten cookie decorating contest. It was a special and magical experience of frosting, sprinkles, and little licorice mouths for the gingerbread men. But there was a buzz and an excitement around the holidays. In December and January, we featured a school-wide spelling bee and then a district spelling bee. And we had a student, Jashanth Chinnamabala, win the school competition in December. Then he and his sister went on to be finalists in the district spelling bee a few weeks ago, and Jashanth did emerge as the champion. The final word was porpoise. It was an unpublished and unrehearsable word. They broke the spelling bee after completing each word on the list, and they had to go to the unpublished list in order to provide a larger challenge. So congratulations to Jashanth. And finally, as we talk, we were able to feature a winter music concert for students in grades 5K, 2nd, and 4th. Great job to Ms. Helmbrecht. She's our brand new music teacher. It was her first concert that she'd ever put on, and she did an outstanding job, as evidenced by the student speakers, the singing, and the playful video of kindergarten up front. It's been an awesome year, and we're looking forward to great things happening. We'd like to feature 3 different staff members this evening as well, talking about a different angle of Kennedy Elementary School. Each year we try to feature something a little bit different, and this year's no different. So I'd like to have Mrs. Calloway, Mrs. McGivern, and Mrs. Starr come up to the microphone, please. They have a presentation for you about the Eagle Way at Kennedy Elementary School. Do you want me to click?
Okay. Top button.
No.
This
The right
one?
button, yes, sorry.
Okay. We had to laugh at this picture because we all look very similar. We put that up there, I'm like, do we have to put our pictures up there? But okay. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about what we call the Eagle Way at Kennedy. We do a lot of really fun things, and some of those things that go along with the Eagle Way, Craig showcased in some of his pictures that he had up there, including the staff kickball game, which was a huge highlight this year. We had a lot of fun. I'm going to talk a little bit about the technical aspects, and then Mrs. Starr and Mrs. Calloway will talk about some of the other components. PBIS stands for Positive Behavior Interventions and Supports, but our kids know it as the Eagle Way. So we'll have some kids come up and talk about what the Eagle Way means to them, but what it really is a framework that we use to try to create a culture of positivity, consistent expectations for both students and staff. So while we do a lot of positive things, we also want to make sure we understand what the expectations are. Voice levels in the hallway, certain lining up procedures. We have number order, things just that keep things orderly, but also that we're recognizing those positive behaviors, because really our kids are very well behaved. They follow the expectations, but we do take a lot of time to teach those expectations right away at the beginning of the school year. These are some of the more technical documents that we use to help both teachers and students. So we have what we call a matrix. So it outlines each environment within our school and then what the expectations are within each of those environments. And that helps the teachers as they start their classrooms off at the beginning of the year to know what expectations they should teach. So on the right-hand side, we have our passport. And the teachers use that with their classes to go to each of those environments and teach the expectations. And then they fill in those stars as they complete those when the teacher feels that they've mastered the expectations in those areas, and then they can earn an extra recess, which Dr. Gunderson and I typically will supervise for them. In the middle, we have a flow chart to address problem behaviors. So we have what we call majors and minors. If it's a more significant behavior, that would be considered a major, and that would be managed by the office. If it's a minor, some disruption in the classroom or things that just might take one single reminder by the teacher, that might be considered a minor. We have a system that we keep track of. Kids may not always know if they've gotten a minor, but it helps us see if a student is struggling in a particular area. This year, we've utilized EduClimber to look at our behaviors, which has really helped us look at our data more holistically. We've used Google in the past, and it left a little room for interpretation, so it's been nice to have EduClimber. It allows us to look at things a little bit closer and really dig in a little bit deeper. On the left-hand side, you can see our major and minor data. We've had, you can see there's about 126 minors, and I can't see how many majors are on there. 135. So if you look on the bottom, the main takeaway that we have from looking at this data is 97% of our students have had either 0 or 1 major problem behaviors. So overall, our students really are doing great. And we have some students that we're working with on specific plans to help improve some of those other problem behaviors that we're seeing. But these are some of the charts we look at as a team every other month, sometimes more frequently depending on what is happening within our school building. But that helps us to see if there's areas that we need to focus on. When problem behaviors do occur, we work in a building with almost 500 students, so things do happen. We take a variety of different approaches and really try to take a positive and supportive approach. Some of those supports would include the restorative practices, so maybe we do some reteaching about something that happened at recess. Often we'll meet with students individually. I will do check-in and check-out with students. On Friday, there was a conflict that happened at recess, and I had 5 fourth-grade girls in my office just trying to problem solve and talk about what happened, and within 10 minutes, they were back in class, and everybody was happy. So sometimes it's minor things that we can work through pretty quickly. If it is something more significant, there may be more consequences, and usually that would involve meeting with a parent and conversations with the family to hopefully prevent those behaviors from happening again. I'm going to hand it over to Mrs. Calloway.
On the right? Okay. Hi, Mrs. Calloway. I am one of the speech language therapists that works for the district, and specifically one of the speech therapists that works at Kennedy Elementary along with Susie Beatty. I am also on the PBIS team, and part of that team is conveying the expectations to the students, but also building in kind of some fun reinforcing activities and making sure that we have the behaviors up and ready for the students to see so that they can kind of see how they're doing over the course of the month. And that's usually with a centrally located bulletin board. And usually the bulletin board has some sort of a theme so that the students can see how many dojo points or how many points they're accumulating to reach a goal. Usually that goal is some sort of, as I said, fun incentive, like the staff kickball game. We had some drawing and art parties last year. We had a kindness rock party last year where the students made kindness rocks that they painted and then put in a garden. We had Winter Olympic Games last year, and then just most recently we had something called Grinch Bingo. Let me see if there's a picture of that. I think we go one more and then I'll come back. So in December we had Grinch Bingo, and that was the final prize for, well, how many weeks do we usually have?
I think we had to grow the heart 3 sizes. So
Yes.
we focused on kindness for the month of December.
We did, and so at the end of the month then, we had whole school bingo, which is really nice because it involves the entire school community. We can't always be in one location because of COVID and other factors, but with something like the virtual bingo, all classes can still participate, and there's just that really nice sense of involvement across the school. Dr. Gunderson was virtually streaming and using a spinner. Then students would come out into the hallways and pick from prizes, which were generously donated partially by the PTG. Thank you very much, Anna. Overall, it's just been a really fun experience. The students really enjoy the incentives. They enjoy working with the younger kids and the older kids across grade levels to earn those incentives. Let me go back one. As part of the incentive, sometimes there's bonus things like having lunch with a teacher. This is one picture where some students got to have lunch and games with myself in my office. That was part of the Grinch Bingo, and multiple staff members, Mrs. Berner also stepped forward, and there were a plethora of teachers who really enjoyed spending time with students and offering those incentives. I think the next slide then is Mary Beth, right? Yeah. But we just really appreciate the involvement of the PTG too. They've been fantastic in helping with providing prizes, just offering to help with anything that we need.
Absolutely. My name is Mary Beth Starr. I have been with the Grafton School District since 1995, so a long time. And just a side note, I feel very fortunate. I have 3 boys that have all gone through the Grafton school system, and my husband and I constantly comment on how prepared they are for life beyond high school and how well they've done in college because of the great teachers that we have here. So. What I wanted to do for you is zoom in a little bit on how this is all used, the PBIS program is used within the classroom, and some of the things that I do as a 2nd grade teacher and my 2nd grade team does as well. We're very much on the same page. So the way that in 2nd grade, the way that we start out is we teach the children, like we've talked about, going with the passport, going to different areas of the school and teaching them the correct behavior, what our expectations are in each of the different areas. And we tried to make it fun. We have used this respectful Rachel, responsible Ryan, ready to learn Robert, and really safe Rita. We have they're little like icons for the kids to learn. There's poems that we've developed that go along with them, and we've kind of brought that in with our social studies curriculum, because our social studies curriculum really deals with community. And so we've linked that together, and we've talked about how our school is a community and how we can use good behavior in our school to really benefit everybody around us. That happens to be our first day of school picture from this year. Another thing that we do within our classroom is we write a classroom promise. So the children and I generate ideas together on what types of things we could do to make our classroom environment a great place to learn all year long. And so those are their ideas. I kind of pulled them all together, and then what the children did is they did a thumbprint and kind of turned that into a little person, a little avatar of themselves. And we refer back to that all the time. We will read that frequently in class. If a child has a hard time in a certain area, maybe on the playground or in the lunchroom, we will refer back to our promise. And we also refer back to our poems that we did earlier in the year. One way that we incorporate our Dojos, which is how we do our school-wide incentive by earning Dojos and trying to accumulate a school-wide total to earn like our Grinch Bingo, we also use it within the classroom. So when I'm always paying attention and trying to catch kids doing the right thing, catching them when they're sitting correctly or when they're being a good role model. And I always point out what they're doing well so that other children then kind of zoom in and they want to do the same thing. And I actually have the Dojo app right on my phone. So I can do it in the hallway, I can do it at recess, I can do it as the children are sitting in front of me. I can say, oh, so-and-so's doing a great job of sitting and really paying attention, great job, and I can give them a Dojo right then. They hear a little ding. And so they know what that means. And then what we do is at the end of each month, kids will mark down how many Dojos that they got for the month. And this happens to be September, it's one child's Dojo. They each have their own folder. So then that child, who had 79 Dojos, would be able to choose off the incentive menu that I have. So at 25 points, they can do things like picking a bookmark or wearing a hat in the classroom. 50 points, chewing gum for part of the day, picking a prize from a treasure chest, or sitting in a special chair. And for 75 points, which is a really big deal, they can sit in my chair, which is a really cushy one, and they wheel it over and they get to sit in my chair for the whole day at their desk. They can bring a stuffed animal to school for the day, or a really popular one this year has been our mystery bag. They don't know what they're getting. They have a sealed bag. They take it home. There's all kinds of goodies in there. And to the left, those are what our coupons look like that they can, and then they can take them home and show their parents what they've earned.
Okay, just to close here on this portion, we always have some next steps. We've worked with the PBIS network, which is a regional, they have it for the whole state, but we work within this region, and she likened it to doing laundry. Like, it's never done. We always have to keep looking at it and keep working at it, and it never really goes away. So we're always looking for ways to improve. And as we know, social emotional needs of kids, it's not getting any easier. We have a lot of needs, and we're always looking for ways to help kids feel included and belong. As we know, when their emotional needs are met, they're going to do better academically. So in the next coming weeks, we are also going to be implementing a way for parents to get notified when their child is nominated by a teacher for following the Eagle Way, similar to a Falcon Feather at the middle school, where we haven't had that in the past. When a teacher has nominated a student, it hasn't necessarily gone home. The student might get recognized at school. But I think it's a great way to make a homeschool connection for those families. And we're always looking for new ways to, celebrate as a whole building. It's really nice when we can celebrate as a whole community. COVID has definitely made some challenges there, but I think we found ways like the kickball game, doing things outside where we can all be together. It's really nice to be able to just stop for 20 minutes once a month to say the whole school is doing bingo or the whole school is going outside for a kickball game. And it just creates that sense of community. So we're always looking for new ideas and things that kids enjoy doing, because that's a really important part of their school experience. So I'm excited now to hear these students. I've read some of these essays, and I'm excited for them to have a chance to come up and share what they have done. So I'm going to have Dr. Gunderson introduce them.
Okay, so there is a strategy that we're working with where we're talking about the system, the school, down to the classroom, and now we're getting further and further down and more specific to feature some of our students who are going to be reading an essay to you. In the months of December and January, we did a school-wide essay contest for students in grades 3, 4, and 5 to talk about what the Eagle Way means to them as students and also how they demonstrate the Eagle Way at school. We had over 20 applications and essays come through to us, and from those 20 wonderful essays, we selected 5 that we felt were representative of the different grades, different backgrounds of students. And so we would like to have students come up and share what the Eagle Way means to them as students at Kennedy Elementary School. And so we'll get situated here, and we'll have you come up one at a time, and we'll get the microphone set up, and you can read your essays to the school board and the audience nice and slow, and you can take your time. So first up, we'll have Aubrey D. come up, a 3rd grade student.
At Kennedy Elementary, students and teachers practice the Eagle Way. If you don't know already, the Eagle Way means to be respectful, responsible, safe, and ready to learn. The Eagle Way is very important to me. At school, I am respectful by listening to my teachers during class, raising my hand when I have a question, and using my manners. I am responsible at school because I pick up trash on the ground at recess. I am safe at school by always following directions during fire drills, tornado drills, and knockdown drills. I am ready to learn at school by paying attention in class and to other teachers and helpers throughout the school day. The Eagle Way is important for all kids at Kennedy Elementary because it makes our school friendly and fun. Thank you for letting me share with you tonight.
Easton, come on up. Good job, Aubrey.
Actions that affect the school, all about the Eagle Way, by Easton Becker. When everyone follows the Eagle Way, it positively impacts the entire school. To follow the Eagle Way, be respectful, be kind to others and yourself, and be helpful. Respect. Respecting one another means understanding how other people think and knowing everyone learns differently. It is also important to respect yourself because of the choices you make. Lastly, if you respect your teacher, she will respect you back. Kindness. Being kind means if a friend's struggling with something going on in their life, give them some of your joy so they can feel the kindness going into them. You can show kindness to the teacher by not interrupting and raising your hand after the teacher is done talking. Being helpful. Being helpful to your friends and teachers builds a strong community. Being helpful could be standing up when somebody's getting bullied or lending a hand when a friend gets hurt. It can also be helping the teacher clean up the classroom at the end of the day and giving reminders to friends who may not be showing the Eagle Way. These are just some of the ways that following the Eagle Way can help make our school a great place to learn. When making choices at school, stop and think. Am I doing the best I can? Being the best I can. If you are showing the Eagle Way.
Next up, we have Carter, 4th grade student.
How to follow the Eagle Way. Following the Eagle Way is a really important way to be respectful, responsible, safe, and ready to learn. Here are ways you can follow the Eagle Way. The way you can follow the Eagle Way is you can be quiet in the hallways. Being quiet can be helpful to other classes so you don't disrupt other students' learning time. Also, when you are quiet, then you are respectful to other people. You should be safe in the hallway so people don't get hurt. You should also be safe going up and down the stairs. Being respectful to the materials in the classroom is a great way to follow the Eagle Way. Putting things back where they belong will keep your classroom clean and a better learning environment. Also, you want to be kind to the materials and people in your classroom. Lastly, to be respectful in your classroom, you should be working hard on what you're doing, like math, social studies, or science. It is fun when you get things done. Sometimes you get to do fun things after. My last example to follow the Eagle Way is to show teachers and classmates respect. Teachers are here to help you with tough problems you have, like if you're stuck on a hard math problem. Being respectful to teachers and classmates is helpful so you can get more things done. If you're kind to them, they'll be kind to you. You should help your teachers so they can teach you better. Sometimes when they forget something, like when they have to work on lunch seats and where people have to sit at lunch, you could help them. You can also help your classmates when they need help trying to solve a problem. You need to respect your teachers and classmates, like when your teachers. Yeah. Also be considerate of what they are feeling, like sad, happy, mad, or confused. You need to listen to your friends and teachers so you can help them solve the problems that they need to figure out. It is important to be respectful, responsible, safe, and ready to learn. That's why we follow the Eagle Way.
Good job, Carter. Next up, we have Kaylee.
I've been at KES since I was 4. Every day we would be reminded about the Eagle Way. Over time, I've come to realize what the Eagle Way is and what it means. Well, at least to me. Being kind is a huge part of the Eagle Way. For example, being kind as a student at KES is important because it will prepare us for being kind as adults. Another reason is that being kind will make us more successful in life. Kind of like how I learned that being positive in life can make you more successful, especially if you have a good attitude. Finally, being kind can bring joy to others. This is what the Eagle Way means to me. Being respectful is another big part of being a KES Eagle. For example, being respectful is a huge part of being a friend. Nobody wants a friend who's not respectful to them and respectful to other people. Another reason that being respectful is a big part of the Eagle Way is doing it can teach us to be even more respectful in the future. And finally, because being respectful can make it so others don't get their feelings hurt. This is what the Eagle Way means to me. And finally, being responsible is not just a big part of the Eagle Way, but it is also a big part of life. For example, being responsible has taught me to take better care of my dog. I used to forget to feed him sometimes, but don't worry, my dad would do that when I forgot. Another reason being responsible is that the Eagle Way has taught us to be responsible with our things, like a locker, a cubby, an iPad, and even a Chromebook. Finally, the last reason being responsible is a big part of the Eagle Way and life is that when you listen to an adult or when they tell you to do something, this is what the Eagle Way means to me. This might not be what you thought the Eagle Way is, but it is what it means to me. The Eagle Way has so far helped me in life, so maybe it can help you too, by being kind, respectful, and responsible. This is what the Eagle Way means to me.
So Cassidy's going to read hers off of a Chromebook, which folds in half like a tablet. It's pretty cool.
The Eagle Way, to me, the Eagle Way means to be responsible, respectful, safe, and ready to learn. It also means to be kind, not just to people at school, but in the community. Also, there are many people here at school that are here to help and support you. And it's a whole lot of fun here because you have your friends. School is a safe place to share and learn, and it is a way to get away from your parents. And you get to meet new people, and you might have something in common with each other. Thank you for letting me share.
So I'd like to give a big kudos and shout out to our essay writers, to the supporting teachers and the families who helped with this. It was a family endeavor. In fact, a lot of our students wrote their essays over winter break, and they just took that extra initiative to put it together, to turn it in on time, and then to take a risk coming out here tonight. So thank you very much, essay writers and families, for your support. Then as we close, I wanted to close with two different quotes for you, one from Vincent van Gogh and then one from Amanda Gorman as well. But great things are done by a series of small things that are brought together. And this evening was all about showcasing different segments and fragments of our school year that, when put together, mean a great deal to our students, our staff, our families, and our community, putting that great school together. And it takes everyone to do that. It takes all different levels, all different ages, levels of experience and interest to put together a great school, and I'm so fortunate for everyone. And finally, Amanda Gorman said, we lift our gazes not to what stands between us, but what stands before us. And we have a huge opportunity to bond together, to work together with one another, to see through a challenging school year and challenging circumstances, to put a great school and a great school district in front of us. So I want to thank you all for participating and listening tonight, and we're here if you have any questions or want to discuss anything further. But thank you for having us.
Are there any questions?
No, just a comment. I mean, it's always great when the kids come back and stand up in front, and the courage that it takes for those guys to do that. And congratulations, everybody did fantastic.
And I would say, you know, Dr. Gunderson, you described your presentation tonight, if I got this right, system, school, classroom, staff, student, from top all the way down. And I must give kudos, as Steve said, to the students, the smallest piece, but the most important piece of that system. And as Steve said, the courage that you showed in standing up this evening is remarkable, but the words that you shared regarding the Eagle Way are lessons for all of us for life. So, you know, thank you for thinking those through and putting those thoughts to paper, because we all need those reminders. And I can't tell you how well you represent all elements of that school and this system, and we can't thank you enough. So thanks for coming and for your hard work. Well done. Thank you. Yes.
Students, you're
by all
dismissed.
means. If you're not interested in the rest of the agenda, please. Thanks again for coming out this evening.
I happened to be over at Kennedy last week and Dr. Gunderson had someone in his office, and he actually had the 5 students in there. And they were talking about their speeches and so forth, so I got to meet all of them. And they were talking about that came in as they were ordering what flavor pizza they wanted. Dr. Gunderson was making sure that they were fed well, so they got some pizza for all the work that they did. So great kids, and it was fun meeting them. Some I hadn't met before, so it was fun to see them. So moving on into my report. Thanks to Jennifer Griffith for all of her hard work running our spelling bee. You saw Dr. Gunderson talk about that with the Kennedy piece. We held our final competition on Thursday, January 13th in the auditorium. We had a total of 38 qualifiers from our elementary schools and the middle school come together. So congratulations to all the students that competed that night, but a special congratulations to the champion, Kennedy student Dishant Chittubamala, as well as finalists Javali Chittubamala, Vishant Selvakumar, and Audrey Hansen, the 3 of them all from John Long Middle School. All 4 students advanced to the CISA 1 Regional Spelling Bee, which will be held virtually next month. They did, I don't remember how many words were that were on the memorization pages. It was in the hundreds, and we made it through all of those, and they had to go into more words that they had never seen before that were on this other page, this other part of the booklet. So they did a great job. It was a fun event, and thanks to Jennifer again for running that for us. And then congratulations to the members of the 2 first LEGO League Challenge teams that have advanced to the Wisconsin State Championship Tournament. The Random Engineers, a team of 6th through 8th graders at John Long Middle School, and Team Refried Beans, a team of 5th through 8th graders from Woodview Elementary and JLMS They will compete with the top 24 teams in Wisconsin at MATC on February 6th. So I'll have an update for you at our next board meeting. We'll get some pictures of the kids and possibly be able to get them to come here as well, so you'll be able to see them. And then 2 proclamations to read for you. One is for Wisconsin School Bus Driver Appreciation Week. Whereas more than 15,000 school bus drivers in the state of Wisconsin travel over 82 million miles a year to safely transport more than 600,000 students to and from school every day, and whereas these drivers, managers, and operators of school buses practice and promote the highest standards to assure the protection of their passengers, which has included adapting to new protocols and considerations to address COVID-19 over the past nearly 2 years, and whereas we also understand that the COVID-19 pandemic has put a significant strain on the workload of our state's school bus drivers, managers, and operators, as it has intensified the long-existing industry labor shortage and placed continued stress on workers who are doing their best to provide for the communities and students they serve. And whereas throughout these challenging and uncertain times, Wisconsin school bus drivers have provided a sense of comfort, security, and consistency when our kids and communities have needed it most. And whereas we recognize that the Wisconsin School Bus Association, through its board of directors, pledges its full and dedicated cooperation with the Wisconsin Department of Transportation's Bureau of Transportation Safety, Division of Motor Vehicles, and Division of State Patrol, the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction, and schools, law enforcement agencies, parent-teacher associations, and other organizations throughout our state to promote public awareness of the importance of school bus transportation and safety. And whereas this week, the state of Wisconsin joins all Wisconsinites in expressing our sincere gratitude and appreciation for the school bus drivers, managers, and operators across our state for the critically important work they do to ensure Wisconsin students have a safe and reliable way to get to and from school every day. Now, therefore, I, Tony Evers, Governor of the state of Wisconsin, do hereby proclaim February 14th through 18th, 2022 as Wisconsin's School Bus Driver Appreciation Week throughout the state of Wisconsin, and I commend this observance to all of our state residents. So we want to, during that week, we will take a special opportunity to thank Right Way, all the bus drivers, the managers that they've done a great job with us. One of those pieces that has allowed us to stay open. You know, we've had a few times where we've had to combine bus routes, we've had to do various things, and they've been extremely flexible working with us, with our principals, activities, all the things that are important for us, and they do a great job. So that is the 14th through the 18th. And then we have National School Counseling Week the week before, and there's a proclamation where it says, whereas school counselors are employed in schools to help students reach their full potential and graduate college and career ready, and whereas school counselors are actively committing to helping students explore their abilities, strengths, interests, and talents as these traits relate to career awareness and development, and whereas school counselors advocate for and respond to the mental health needs of students to promote social, emotional, and mental well-being, and whereas school counselors help students focus on ways to further the educational, personal, and social growth of their children, and whereas school counselors work with all staff and stakeholders to help students explore their potential and set realistic goals for themselves, and whereas school counselors seek to identify and utilize community resources that can enhance and complement comprehensive school counseling programs and help students become active members of their communities, and whereas comprehensive school counseling programs are equitable and considered an integral part of the education process, enabling all students to achieve success in school. Therefore, be it resolved that I, Jill K. Underly, State Superintendent of Public Instruction, declare February 7th through 11th, 2022, be proclaimed as National School Counseling Week, a time to recognize school counselors and the comprehensive programs they implement to support Wisconsin students. So National School Counseling Week, Better Together, February 7th through 11th, and we will take that week to honor them and all the work they do for our kids, both before the pandemic and now as we look at even more mental health and issues that students are having and helping them even with their career planning. So we appreciate all the work that they do. Another piece is the date for graduation. So this is a piece that's just come about as we are preparing for the phase 2 of Enhancing Our Future project and the timeline needed in order to have that project completed in time for the fall season. We discussed at a finance committee with that piece of it and possibly having GHS graduation off-site. Mr. Manti had met with some of the seniors for the class of 2022 to discuss other sites and their preferences. We were beginning to finalize that. But as we reflected further on that piece and having students that we felt like it'd be a disservice to our seniors to not have that final culminating experience occur on our campus. So we did reach out to Midwest Turf, who we'd contracted with earlier, with our Phase 2 project. And Jamie and I had spoken with them last week at the Education Convention, and they had said that if we delayed the original start from May 9th, then we wouldn't have it done by August 1st, which was the plan, which is when our fall sports start. But after meeting with Mr. Manti again, we looked at what's a compromise that we could come up with. And so we are looking to move graduation earlier in the year to Saturday, May 21st. It would allow us to have work start on that field May 23rd, which would be 2 weeks later. That 2 weeks later would put us in the middle of August, so there'd still be time for football team, other activities and extracurriculars that would be utilizing that space to be able to use that before their first competition. There'd be time with that. We would have to schedule some other things off-site for the teams that would be planning on using it. Also, waiting until the 23rd would allow our track team that's hosting the conference tournament on the 17th, the conference meet on Tuesday, May 17th, to be able to do that. The next week they get ready for sectionals and state, so it'd minimize the disruption to their season as well. There is not a minimal hours of instruction required by DPI for seniors, so there is no issue with that. Advanced placement exams end on May 13th, so those would be completed. We understand this is early for seniors to graduate, but we think it would be a compromise that would allow the essential memories to be made both for our seniors and for our athletic teams, so both this year as well as into the future. So we're bringing it to the board just to make sure there are no concerns or questions before we make this an official decision and move forward communicating that with our seniors and their parents, so people are coming from out of state or they're starting to do plans for graduation parties. They'd have time to be able to do that as quickly as possible with that.
Any questions or concerns with that thought and recommendation?
I think it's great. I mean, it is, having a senior somewhere else, like I can tell you, I already have out-of-town guests who had booked, like believe it or not, they already planned and booked things for his weekend, but I guess the sooner we get it out, the better, and hopefully family, because I know it is a big thing, families plan months and months in advance for the high school graduation, but.
And it's a non-holiday weekend, because we looked at that as well, and with most airlines now, there's no change fees. And so it maybe people's schedules might be an issue, right? But by having it earlier than the holiday, it also allows for that not to be an extra cost that would go with it. And it also would, because it is earlier than what other schools in our area, the private schools that can start before September 1st, they typically do graduate at that last week in May. There will be other venues available for them to be able to utilize for graduation parties that wouldn't typically be available because of the majority of our public schools are all graduating on that same weekend, and some private schools as well. But we know this is a change. When Scott went back to them and talked to the seniors about, well, we could have it off-site, we have some options. Concordia was willing to work with us and be a great partner with us. But the idea of being on campus really was a big piece of them having that final culminating activity. And with COVID and some of the pieces that they've lost over the last couple of years, to be able to experience that culminating activity, they would be done with school, so they would not come back. We would have Scott's looked at when different concerts are, when senior banquet could be. There's a lot of things that would occur before that. There'd be students that would still be in extracurriculars that would continue, just like we've done in the past when we had summer baseball. Our kids made it to state in soccer, would be a piece where those could have competed after school was out even previous years. But that's what we're bringing to the board before we bring it to our families.
So, no concerns?
No.
Okay, great. Then we will start communicating that starting tomorrow to all of our families and to our students. We appreciate that. And then the last thing I have is the GEF update. Save the date for our annual fundraiser, A Night of Giving, taking place on May 13th. So they are planning for an in-person event in Grafton. Details to be shared later, but May 13th is A Night of Giving. And that concludes the superintendent's report.
Thank you. Any questions for Superintendent Nelson?
Are we still thinking like an early evening graduation?
Yes, yep, so we'd still be looking at an evening. Scott and I talked about that. If there was inclement weather, then we would look at moving it to the Sunday. So just like we would have done previously, we'd have it on that Saturday, and then make a decision whether it's Sunday morning or Sunday afternoon, depending on what the weather forecast would look like in some of those pieces.
Any additional questions? All right, thank you, Jeff.
Great.
Moving on to public comment. Those wishing to speak for public comment this evening, Mr. Nash, I see one. Anyone else? All right, I will, in 1 second. I did receive approximately 14 emails from 7 residents. Those emails have been forwarded to all of the board members. With that, I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Nash.
Dan Nash, 1620 North Pine Street, Grafton. First of all, how do I follow that up? I want to hire like 3 of them and do this for me because my heart rate always goes through the roof when I do this. I had a couple of things that I just want to say here, but first of all, thank you for the synergy you bring between the high school and the elementary school, and seeing the band there, seeing Chambers there, just getting the kids excited and bringing them into the program. That's awesome, guys. Thank you. Okay, so for Grafton Music and Theater program, last week we had the Kennedy and Woodview Winter Concerts, full house. We filled the auditorium both times. That was fantastic. Let's keep moving it to tomorrow night. Tomorrow night is 7 p.m. Graftonics preview concert. This is a warm-up for their 2-5 quarterfinal competition in DeKalb, Illinois. If any of you guys come to anything, this would seriously be the one to come to, okay? It's fun. It's poppy. It's all the songs you know. Bring your kids. They might enjoy it. It would be a good time. Seriously. Best concert of the year. Saturday, 1/29, Lake Moraine Honors Choir Festival in West Bend, 4 p.m. at the West Bend High School. John Long has selected, actually they have 12 8th graders that actually made it to that honors choir. Been there. It's a very fun, good time. 226 Middle School Solo Ensemble in Kewaskum. And then 3-5, we're going to try it. We're going to do Chili Day Reboot, but it's actually music in the schools. So it'll be in the auditorium this year, 6th grade through 12th grade, band, choirs. We're going to try Chili Day. We're going to bring it back. Chili Day is awesome. Everybody come. It's a good time. Bring your kids, because I'm going to take all their money. Okay, and then that would be 11 to 2 on the 5th. More details to come. And then 312 High School Solo Ensembles in Port Washington. Our next meeting is February 2nd in the auditorium at 6 p.m. Please all come. And you can reach out to us or find us at the Grafton School District website, which has been redone, and it is fantastic. I went through it today. I could never find all the community stuff. Kudos, great job. I mean, seriously, went to everything, found the boosters for everyone. It was a great job. Facebook, GMTB, and also you can see us at gmtb.ptboard.com. And the last thing I'd like to say is that as I was taking my son back to school this weekend, we were talking about the Geico commercials and how I go ahead and suddenly now I'm the old guy with the house. And so I'd like to just say one thing here. All the staff, thank you for supporting these kids. It means everything to them. Every single one that I've been with, you guys have all supported the kids. But I'm sorry, I got to pick on one of you. Scott, every single concert you are there. Every single performance you are there. And I know it's not just for your job. I think you enjoy it just a little bit. And thanks for bringing your kids. And fantastic job by that man right there. Thank you for your time.
Any additional comments this evening? All right, hearing none, let's move on to item D, 2021-2022 school year plan update.
Yes, I have Laura coming up to walk us through our school year update, some of the things that have changed over the last month, and then an updated recommendation. She's got it for you.
Okay, all right, this is the snapshot of our COVID activity in Ozaki and Washington County. After a pretty significant spike in cases a few weeks ago, the trajectory, at least in Ozaki County, is decreasing. And this slide shows the daily percentage of positive cases by building. The week after Christmas break, we had seen a pretty significant increase in the number of positive cases, but those numbers have dropped off in the last 2 weeks. And this is the district dashboard as of today. Compared to last month, at the last school board meeting, we have roughly the same number of positive cases for staff and students. And this chart shows the percentage of vaccinated children and adults in different age brackets. And as you can see, the 5 to 11-year-olds, 27% of those children in the county have completed their vaccination cycle. Compared to about a month ago, it was at 16%, so we saw a little bit of an increase there. 12 to 17-year-olds, 68% of students in our county here are vaccinated. This chart shows the number of positive cases by grade level, by building for the year. When we look at the total number of students who have had COVID this school year, it's been pretty consistent from building to building. Anywhere between 17 and 19% of all of our students have had COVID so far this year. And this is just another visual of our total positive cases by building by month. And then on January 5th, our district adopted the updated CDC guidelines for quarantine and isolation in order to allow our students and our staff to return to classrooms earlier. So in general, this reduces the length of quarantine to 5 days, with students and staff being asked to wear a mask for an additional 5 calendar days when they return to school. There are many hours spent each day conducting contact tracing in our school, and each family of the positive contact will receive a letter letting them know that their child was exposed and what the exposure date was, and then giving them quarantine options. And then looking at our data, specifically during the week of January 10th to the 14th, we notified 168 families that their child was a close contact. And out of those 168, only 3 families chose to quarantine their child. That's just 1%. So if 99% of families are continuing to send their child to school, the question became, well, is there spread happening within school? So we looked at our data, and the close contacts listed on the contact tracing sheets, I looked at all of those. Out of 429 close contacts, only 5 students later became positive. So again, that's only 1% of our students. So our data is showing that families are really not acting on the close contact information that they receive. And of those close contacts, the ones that remain in school, only 1% become positive themselves. So contact tracing by our support staff, teachers, principals, it is very, very time consuming. And there are concerns about staff burnout and just a lack of their ability to get to their day-to-day tasks. It is nothing for our secretaries to spend a half a day, sometimes a full day, just doing contact tracing.
And this is an issue in other districts that are doing this. Some districts haven't been doing it all year. Some districts have done it and have stopped doing it, as well as with our health department. So this has been a topic of discussion over the last month with the health department, because they are also having a hard time contact trace because of the amount of cases that have occurred, the delay with rapid tests gone, it's the delay of getting the PCR back, with it being a 5-day quarantine, not a 10-day quarantine. You're contact tracing for someone that could be coming back the next day based on when the test occurred. And they're also in the midst of looking to see, is the state gonna give different guidance? And we had hoped that, they'd said last week that they were thinking on Thursday to get guidance from the state. The guidance did not come Thursday afternoon, it did not come Friday, it still hasn't come today. But we had hoped to be able to align more closely with the health department on this, because they're also struggling. They've said they're not contacting tracing all of their cases because they can't. We're in a position where we haven't taken that approach. We haven't said we're only going to contact trace certain grade levels or at certain times. We've contact traced the whole time, and it's become an exhausting amount of work for our staff. And I think the new CDC guidance that came out that we moved to on the 5th has transferred the ownership of COVID onto individual people and their families. And we're trying to make sure that we are working with our families, but at the same time, one of our most essential assets, besides the students that we have, is our staff. And if we start losing staff over this, as we continue to be in flu season, as we continue to see Omicron go through our system, we need people here, and that's becoming a huge concern for us. And so I'll let Laura continue, but it isn't just us dealing with this. It is the health department, it's other districts that have been doing this and trying to find ways to keep students safe. And is the amount of work we're doing resulting in the outcome that we're looking for?
Yep. So despite the high community transmission rates, we're really not seeing that within our schools. We're seeing it more within families. So if one family member gets COVID, chances are pretty good that others will as well. But December, we had a really relatively low rate of positive COVID cases until students left for break. And then when they're with family, with friends, that's when we saw the spike in cases.
So as a result, we are making 2 recommendations tonight. First of all, continue with all mitigation factors except remove the requirement to transition to virtual instruction when a class reaches 15%. We know that virtual learning negatively impacts both our students and our families, and the transmission level is extremely low in our schools. We have not had a classroom transition to virtual learning since November 24th. So we didn't see any of that in December, no cases in January. And then we're also asking to discontinue the practice of contact tracing and notifying individual families of close contacts. Again, this is a very time-consuming practice that's not impacting families or students. We would continue with other mitigation factors, and we would continue with the daily update of the number of positive cases. We still have our testing available Monday through Friday, although the rapid tests are no longer available. Beginning on January 11th, there aren't any to be had. But we have seen a decline in the number of people testing as well at our site. And part of that might be due to the fact that we don't have the rapid tests, but I looked at 3 different Thursdays in a row. So like on January 6th, we had 82 people test. On the 13th, we had 21. And on the 20th of January, we had 17 people test. So that's really dropped off. But it is still available. It's still an option. But those are the 2 big recommendations that we're making tonight.
Okay, so as we've done in the past, I think let's start with some clarifying questions if there are any. And from there, we essentially have an administrative recommendation this evening that is to remove the requirements to transition to virtual when classes reach 15%, and to discontinue the practice of contact tracing and notifying individual families of close contact. There would be other recommendations. We could get those on the table by virtue of a motion, discussion, a second, and discussion. And we'll do it similar to the past in a framework relative to the administrative recommendation. So, any clarifying questions regarding the data that was presented this evening or the recommendations that were being proposed?
So the second bullet point for the discontinue the practice of contact tracing and notifying individual families, would we go back to how we started the school year as a classroom notification?
That's what we would do. We would use Skyward to see what classroom did it occur in, and then just alert the class. We wouldn't be saying who was sitting. And we started the year like that. We started the year doing that, and that resulted in more angst from families. And so I remember as a leadership team meeting and talking about, okay, well, if this is causing more concerns and more calls, we should just contact trace. Let's go back to contact tracing. And we've done that now, and now we'd like to go back to what we did before.
So there would be notification of something that happened in a classroom, that there would be awareness.
Yes.
Okay.
Thanks for asking that question. That was mine.
Yeah, and that's much less time sensitive,
Right.
because if Skyward runs who's in that class, it's more easily able to be seen instead of, I was talking to Kevin during the day who was watching video to see was a student in close contact at different spaces, and that's what you're doing on a daily basis as a principal.
Other questions? Okay, then, hearing none, thoughts relative to this recommendation, or thoughts relative to other recommendations, or other thoughts in general?
I'm curious refresh my memory, what happens at 4 and 6?
Yes, so at 4%, we change that so where that is where the teacher is required to wear a face covering, and that we move to optional self-quarantine. So if it's close contact, and so if we're not doing close contact tracing, then that piece would sort of come out of it, because you'd already be able to optionally self-quarantine. And maybe we should bring that up. Can you bring that up, Kara? Because that might be easier. We should have thought of that. I didn't think of that here, and I apologize. But because part of it is that we changed earlier was where, optional self-quarantine for the 5 or 10 days. If 5 days, the student wears a mask for the additional 5 days. If self-quarantine is not chosen, then the student must wear a mask for 10 calendar days while in attendance, and no COVID testing is required. So if we're not doing contact tracing, it would be optional quarantine. So families would still get the letter. They would know that someone in the classroom, so as a parent, I would go back to in the fall, I got multiple emails saying, Lindy was in a classroom with someone who was positive for COVID. I could then ask Lindy, who are you sitting by? Is that student in class? Within how in class, you can sort of try and figure that out, or say, well, okay, then you're going to stay home and you're going to quarantine. So parents would still have the opportunity to quarantine, self-quarantine their child based on receiving that letter. But we would move away from the masking piece, which is a big part of this optional self-quarantine. But the big piece is face coverings are required regardless of vaccination status. And then if 4% rate is building-wide, masks are worn while entering and leaving the building and during transition times.
And then 6 is,
And 6% is everyone's wearing a face covering. You go into the optional close contact quarantine again, but lunch periods go back to 2021 protocols. So you go back to lunchrooms not occurring in one space. At the high school and at the middle school, they'd be multiple spaces, and at the elementary school, they go back into their classroom to stop the spread during that, at that time.
I mean, my feeling is we're just delaying what, there's no reason for 4% and 6% mitigation levels in my view. August, we were told multiple times, multiple board members even suggested that just wait until the kids are eligible for the vaccine, and then a certain timeline went back and forth. That's 3 months ago. Kids have been vaccinated. I felt like at that time that there's no chance that that was going to actually be when we ended this. And now we're here and we're still not. We're way past that point. I mean, people aren't acting on it. As parents, they're not acting on it. I mean, as far as quarantining or taking your kids out, I mean, I feel like it's time to rip the Band-Aid off and just, I mean, if you're sick, certainly stay home for the 5 days, I think is reasonable. If you test positive, that makes sense. But beyond that, I mean, on some level, I feel like we're missing an opportunity to lead versus waiting for somebody else to say what I feel like a significant percentage of the population has known for a long time. You look at these other schools that have been masked since March of 2020, I mean, almost all of them have significantly higher case rates than us. So then it's like, we're gonna pull the kids out that are positive and then put the rest of the kids in masks that now everybody's pretty much saying cloth masks are not effective. Nothing was ever effective for an 8-year-old to wear them properly, but even the districts, Shorewood Bay, Homestead, I mean, they're all ahead of us and they've been masked. Homestead hasn't been masked the whole time, but the others certainly in Milwaukee County have been. It just seems like at this point, why are we hanging on to some of these things without evidence? And we've done what so many people asked for. You've had a chance to get your kid vaccinated. It's been 3 months. I feel like it's time to move on. If you test positive, stay home for 5 days. That's my thought.
How many instances of 4% and 6% have we had? I know we've had 6 or 7 instances of virtual.
Yeah, 4 to 6% almost happens.
All the time.
Like 4% is one student in an elementary classroom, almost without fault. Maybe I can't think of a classroom. I mean, when I look at the sheet, it'll be multiple times. Almost every classroom at some point has been at the 4%.
But the 4% isn't for the classroom, that'd be for the school, right? That the teachers would have to all wear it?
That's the class.
No, we had that in the elementary classroom. It was 4, 6, and 15%. So it would be at the grade level, but in a classroom, if you were at 4 or 6 or 15% in that classroom, then that would be true. But we've had an instance at the middle school where we had, I think, 6%. I can't see Mr. Deering, but he's coming there. Wasn't it 6% or 4? Yeah, 6%, right? Where everyone I think you wore masks for a day.
Yep, and then we went virtual.
And then you had one
And
option.
we were able to not have 7 days where we were masking our entire 6th grade with virtual.
Because they went from 6% to 15% in like one day, in all honesty, right? Then they they went virtual, so then it was like, well, 7th, 8th grade, or 6th grade's gone, 7th, 8th grade, everyone's out, and I think they had 0 cases at that point. So we went away from that, but 4 and 6% is, especially at the elementary level, not as much at the secondary level, because it's at grade level. They've been close, but I don't think they've made it there besides that one instance that we had. At the elementary level, it happens quite often because it's one student.
On the board there, it says if the 4% rate at the building-wide masks are worn while entering and leaving.
That's for everyone then.
That's for everyone. And
That's everyone.
And I believe our 4%, the requirement to have staff wear a mask at 4% was to ensure that the teachers were able to stay in the classroom. Right? At the first instance of something occurring, let's make sure that our staff is masked up. But is that happening daily, that we're approaching 4% or that we're over 4% in a classroom? And is it remaining sustained at 4% in those classrooms?
Not with the new 5 days. So like you look at, there's 5 students at Kennedy right now, and that's 5 different classrooms that are all either at 4.2% all the way up to 5.3%. Because there's 5 cases, and they're all spread out in amongst 5 classrooms. So you have 5 classrooms that are at that 4% level, and tomorrow they could drop off, and then someone else could come up in a different classroom. And the option for staff is to wear a face covering no matter what the percentage is, and a number of staff have chosen to do that. Whether the classroom teacher, whether it's an interventionist, a specialist, whatever it may be. But that sort of varies, whereas at Woodview there's 2 and they happen to both be in the same classroom, which means they're 10%.
I think the question is this 4% and 6% really affecting or impacting what's happening? Like, is it gonna happen anyway? Or is it really keeping staff from going home? Like,
yeah, we don't know if the 4% obviously is. We've been fortunate in that 6%, when we've gone to the 6% mitigation factor, that has resulted in us not going virtual since, I think Laura said November. Right, so since November, we have not had the classroom reach that 15% mitigation factor.
did we make a change? Is that what you're saying? What we did at 6% was different prior?
No. I'm just saying
We just haven't seen, okay.
The 6%, I don't know if it's
I think it's just coincidence.
correlation or causation. I don't know, but like
Right. Potentially.
But we know what has happened.
So it looks like only Kennedy back in early January got very close to 6%.
As a building?
As a building.
Yeah, I believe that's true. And obviously, you know, the new CDC's recommendation is having cases come off as cases go on. I mean, it is different when someone gets tested, when they have symptoms, when the weekend is, if you have a day off, all those pieces.
I guess what would be the rationale to keep 4 and 6? Because the default position, you know, when asked, I don't know, July or August, somebody was asked, you know, why didn't we require masks to start? I mean, my response would have been because the default position isn't to do that. That isn't the default, no matter what it was like last year.
And administration's discussion was that, and we spent a lot of time talking about 15% and the contact tracing. And I think we've tried to, I think you used a good analogy, ripping off the bandage, and we aren't doing that. We're slowly pulling it off, right? We continue to, and I've seen emails saying that, you know, you guys continue to take off a mitigation factor, but we've taken off a mitigation factor while watching our data to see, is the mitigation factor that we took away, is that causing us to have more cases? Is that causing us to have to go virtual? Is that causing us to shut down? You know, and that, so we've slowly done that, and our data is, you know, knock on wood, it's just best, it's really good right now, as we look at it.
I mean, I agree with that.
So that's where we've been.
You know, when you said cause versus correlation before, I mean, you know, is taking away a mitigation measure causing our cases to go up or down? I mean, that's somewhat unanswerable. They may go up and down based on that, but I mean, otherwise we could just look at these other schools and say they mask, they have more cases. Well, clearly masks cause COVID. I mean, we're not doing that. I'm not suggesting that, but you know, so to look at it that way, I mean, you were correct with, is this cause or is it correlation? I mean, there were certainly none for ours. You know, I mean, it's just like last year, we could say, it worked, we stayed open because we were masked. Well, one, we were required to. And two, I mean, that doesn't mean something worked or something else didn't work. You know, it was brought up. I mean, it could be something else that's effective.
Yeah, and there's a different variant at that time too, right? I mean, so we've sort of, you know, you've seen the virus morph into these other pieces, and we've continued to stay open, which is our goal, and we've continued to keep our staff healthy. I mean, you read in the paper, there's other districts that's been a huge factor for them, and I'm guessing our staffs are probably doing similar things, and for whatever reason we've been able to stay open, and our staff makes good choices, but I don't think other district staff are making bad choices. I don't think that. So, you know, I think that's a piece of it as well, of slowly peeling back, because if I read the national media, the sky is falling, and there's issues that are going on there. Our data doesn't show that ours is following the national media, but our staff has also been supportive of the direction that the board has taken us with these mitigation factors, and they've been supportive of that, and continue to be strong proponents for kids, and we want to make sure that they feel comfortable as well in our system.
Yeah, and I think from my perspective that the layered targeted mitigation approach was developed to call for increasing mitigation as case counts, positive case counts rose, under a theory that increased mitigation might cause the spread to be reduced. To truly understand that, there would have to be a cause and effect study. I don't know that we can do that.
Right. Well, unfortunately, we did not go with community spread, and that was a big push on that.
Right.
I mean, you know, it was when we hit 800 last year. That was like we couldn't believe it. All Izaki County was all at like over 2,000 a week ago. Like, I mean, because it did, and they call it, you know, the doctor from Children's on the SWSA call. I think Joe was on that. We talked about the ice pick. You know, he's talking about this ice pick going straight up and then coming down, and we're seeing it come down. And that's what they continue to hope will occur. But we are local data controlled, and I think that's been a good measure for us to look at, is our data.
So while I appreciate the administration's deference to board direction regarding this layered targeted mitigation approach, was there discussion as to whether or not administration believes that that's working or effective in any manner? And I think our data would suggest, relative at least to contact tracing, that identified close contact students that meet the definition of close contact aren't turning into positive cases, right? I mean, that's what our data shows.
Okay.
But did administration talk at all about beyond, well, this is the direction that the board wants to go and we support that direction, as to whether or not 4% and 6% mitigation is onerous or difficult to apply and difficult to follow? It's challenging for parents, it's challenging for students, because you know that mitigation measure may change overnight one way and then change back the next day. Have you guys talked about challenges in that regard? And if you haven't, are there challenges in that regard that we should be aware of?
Yes, and to refresh the board's memory, we did bring a recommendation forward that the board voted down. So it isn't that administration's only bringing recommendations forward that the board agrees to. We're bringing forward recommendations that the administrative team believes in. So we came to consensus on this. We had lengthy discussion about, is now the time to look at other factors? And as a team, we just didn't feel that it was. We felt like this is the 15% is the big fear for us of going virtual because of the impact on kids. I mean, Even today, we had a biometric screening, and the nurse who took my blood pressure, when I said, she's like, my blood pressure was high, and she's like, well, why is your blood on? I don't know, we have a board meeting tonight, might be thinking about that. I don't know, I'm trying to think of different things to see why the Packers lost, and she's like, well, your people should be happy. You guys have been open. The district that my kids go aren't open. And it's like, well, yeah, most people are. It's just, but you all have what you're looking for. So, there is different thoughts on this, but it was like, is that the time to do it? And that's why we looked at the data to say, okay, well, it's one thing that only 1% of our families are not doing close contact. So does that mean that if 99% of people want us to do something, that's the right thing to do? Well, maybe, but if they are doing that and then a large percentage of them are becoming COVID positive, then they're not making good choices, which is then going to cause us to shut down. It's going to cause staff members to get sick. It's going to be an issue. So that's why we look further to say, okay, well then, out of those who were identified, how many of them became COVID positive? And it's still 1%. So that's where it's like, okay, the amount of effort that we are putting into it is not resulting in the bang for our buck that we want from our staff. And so, and that's the concern that we have. So, so I guess, yes, we had lengthy discussion as we've had every 2 weeks since April of 2020, whether it was virtual or in person. And maybe for a while there was every week. But every 2 weeks when we sit, this is always a topic of conversation. Principals bringing their perspective from their leadership teams, from working with teachers, from students, and us talking about it as a district-wide team to come up with recommendations to bring to the board for you to consider that are thoughtful and hopefully well planned out.
I guess I'm still in favor of going with the layered approach. I have people that I know that are in other districts that don't have that, and that creates a lot of angst among staff. That there is no plan, we're just a free-for-all. And cases go up, nothing's done. I have classrooms with 7, 8, 9 kids out. It's not efficient or effective to carry that on, and I think that's what we want to avoid.
And going off of that would be my only question about the 15%. I'm not sure if 15% is the right amount, but I do think you hit a point in a classroom where I understand we don't want to go to virtual, but also if a teacher has a quarter to a half of the class out, teaching is not effective either because you're instructing to half the, you are trying to do half the students if you're lucky virtual, half in person, but obviously in a class you're not, when half the class is missing, whatever you taught that day is not going as well because you're then trying to reteach, and it probably would be better to have those kids all virtual because then at least the teacher just has to focus on virtual for the day rather than, and I don't know, because we used to have, prior to COVID, I don't know if it was a board policy or not, but when it hit, I thought it was 20%, and it, it could be the stomach flu went through a classroom, but if 20% of the kids were all out with the same thing, we didn't go virtual, the school closed. Like I remember Woodview, and this is prior to Jeff, norovirus went, it swept through, and they decided to close the school for 2 days for deep cleaning because so many kids were out with the same thing and were so sick, it was decided it would be better. And obviously, whether or not it was coming from the class or from the families, it would be better to separate the kids for a couple of days to at least let it settle.
And I think the deep clean, that's where you see the deep clean of being effective against certain viruses versus other viruses. Is that really, is that the issue that we're having as we see that? And the problem with 15% is, so if we hadn't moved to the CDC's recommendation, for example, on January 5th, we had a kindergarten classroom with 24 kids, 3 students were out, we were gonna be out, so they would have went virtual. Maybe it was 4, whatever the number was. They would have had to go virtual, and that would have resulted then the next day, 3 out of that 4 were coming back, so we would have had 23 healthy kids out, while 1 kid was sick and out. And they'd have been out for 5 days. And that's the issue, is it's one thing to say we're gonna close down for a day because we're gonna do a deep clean, or the weekend's coming up, we're gonna close down on Friday, we're gonna do a deep clean on Friday, let the weekend occur, and we're gonna be good to go. Another to say, well, we're gonna hit 15%, and even though almost all the kids are coming back tomorrow, that 1 kid that went out today, that's gonna require all of us to be out at least 5 days to get to that point. And so that's where, and we liked moving it away from the 10 days, and moving it to calendar days. All those pieces we thought were better, and that's a mitigating factor that we sort of whittled away, and we aren't seeing that decision impacting us having to go virtual, and our concern is then, well, if that worked, why would we but we stick with the 15%. There may be a time when you get to 20% or you get to a number because of something that we would look at that, and that's 20% was something that you use with, other viruses that we've had. And I wasn't here at the time, but in other districts that I've worked in, I remember having that discussion as well.
Nothing in this recommendation will preclude that assessment at 20%.
Correct.
Okay.
That's right. And nothing in our recommendation would preclude someone who chooses to quarantine or chooses to wear a face covering as well.
Right.
It's also something for people to make a decision on.
Right, because I don't think it's deep cleaning, but to be honest with you, if there are 5 kids in the, 5 out of 20 kids have COVID at the same time, I do think that it's likely that, they've had exposure outside of, like, this is 20 kids, and if 5 of them currently all have COVID, sure, they may have all gotten it from their families, but there is the chance that it is spreading in the classroom, you hit 25%, 50% of a classroom. Yeah, somebody came back, truthfully, I think you'd be a close contact almost every single day, because even if it is the one kid, you're probably every day exposing your kid, And at what point do you say, fine, take a few days apart from each other just to, it's kind of like when you have the birthday party and half the class went and they all, you have 6 or 7 kids out then because it happened, they all went to a slumber party and it all happened. That's great, but then maybe, I just think it's so hard on the teachers and on the students when half the kids aren't there, or a quarter of their. And maybe not, it's harder, I guess, in the middle. If it ever got to middle or high school, if you told me, like, at the high school, 20% of the kids had COVID at the same time, I would honestly, be very concerned, because that's 20% of our entire high school has COVID at the same time. How many kids are spreading it to each other all the time then? So I don't know if I'm comfortable with having no number, or just your discretion on I trust your judgment, but like, that is a call for you then. Well, this classroom was at 20, at what point do I say that classroom has to versus that classroom?
I feel like that makes sense to me, and that the decision to go virtual would be executed a lot easier in that regard. Like you're saying, so many kids are gone, who are you really teaching anyway? But it says nothing about the 4 and 6, right?
Yeah,
that's not.
That's low, right?
Right, again, I feel like we're still going back to, I feel better about 6 because, I guess I'm confused.
Well, it's arbitrary, the numbers.
They're all arbitrary for sure.
Right. There's no real data to support any of that.
And I'm still curious about.
And are you seeing in the schools that 4 and 6% are actually keeping staff and students in school? That's what you're saying. We really can't see if it's cause or.
Well, we're seeing that isn't getting us the 15%, but is it? I'm not willing to put my nickel down and say it's the things that we have listed on 6%, but it must not be hurting because we're staying open. Someone could argue with me that those factors are non-factors. I don't know if they're willing to put their nickel down on that either, though. Like, I think those are feelings that we have, and there's people that are way smarter than we are, than I am, that have come up with different thresholds across the nation at universities and so forth, but no one's ever agreed on exactly the same one. There's all kinds of studies out there about this, but there's a lot of feelings
The county health
about
department
it.
came up with 300 as the burden.
Pardon me?
County health department's 300 as the
Right.
burden.
This is a unique thing that we've never dealt with before. There is people making their best guess at the time, and sometimes we said that often, choosing the best worst option, because it is an unknown, but no matter who I talk to,
Staff
we're dealing with it.
resources, right? And it's still using staff resources, and that would normally be doing other things. They're still trying to keep track of.
Well, the 4 and 6% I think are a minimal. Rick, isn't that more of a minimal piece of that's just being entered into a spreadsheet and then getting translated into our board? And it actually allows us to see, are we seeing spread?
So that is a more manageable.
The 4 and 6% isn't a concern for us. It's figuring out the close contact. That's where the majority of our work is being tied up. And typically, when you had rapid tests, it was on Monday because everyone came in on Monday because of the weekend. and that, nothing to do with school, as everything to do with life. I mean, there's just a lot of things people can do outside of school that you couldn't do a year ago. And so then they'd be coming on a Monday, and that would usually be, as we get ready to prepare, I'd see our numbers go up for our dashboard. But now it's, the rapids, so it's more intermittent, I guess, as people are getting results that go with it.
We did talk about that in August, though, when, or at one of the meetings, when people have a chance to get vaccinated and how long, and then we can, change direction. How long is it gonna be? Like, why was that discussed if we're not gonna do it?
What's the end game?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's no end game. It's like, we're just gonna keep doing this because a very small group of people is, I would say are irrationally afraid that their kids are gonna be sick from COVID. Because there's no evidence that kids are getting sick from COVID. A very, very small. They're testing positive for sure, but the county numbers are blowing things out of the water, and there's still nothing. I mean, all the, how are you going to feel when somebody dies? I mean, literally, we've had people say that to us. And, some of those people are going to the concerts without masks on now. I mean, it's like, I don't know if they even believe it anymore. So we're just like hanging on to these little pieces just because somebody might feel better if we did that. I mean,
So your question is not rhetorical in as much as we are responsible for determining what that protocol ought to be. So
Ultimately to stay open, right?
As I try to frame this just a bit, let me start. Number one, the recommendation from administration tonight covers two elements. One is contact tracing. I'm not hearing anybody really talk about, gosh, we really need to continue the individual contact tracing as we've been. Administration is saying that it's very burdensome, it's very difficult to do. I think, Jeff, your point relative to transfer of action to families is very appropriate. At the end of the day, when COVID started, the notion of contact tracing made a whole lot of sense when it was, if you were in close contact with a positive case, you were expected to quarantine. Now, that's bifurcated a million ways, not a million, that's hyperbole, but it's bifurcated in many different ways. Are you vaccinated? Are you recently vaccinated? I mean, all of these different things that has transferred the requirement out of our hands into the hands of some other decision maker. I mean, parents have to engage in whether or not their children are vaccinated to determine what that quarantine protocol ought to be. And I support this administrative recommendation regarding eliminating individual contact tracing. And by nod of head, is that something that we all seem to be in agreement with?
Yeah.
Okay, second piece of the recommendation then speaks to the elimination of 15%. Jerry, I think you would like to propose the elimination of 4 and 6.
Yeah, I mean, I'd support 15, although I think Carrie's point, if given the choice, not that you were suggesting it's one or the other, but the 15 almost makes more sense to me than the 4 or the 6, or 20 or whatever it is, but I would also leave it up to the discretion of if there was an outbreak in one class or, then yes, then do something for that one class. We don't seem to be coming close to those levels anyway, so I don't.
As it relates to going virtual.
Yeah, right.
But I understood your line of thought to be you would prefer to see the elimination of the mitigation measures at 4% and at 6%.
Yes.
And I think if that is what you believe, then I would suggest that you put a motion on the table. We get a second, we can discuss it further, and that can serve as a basis of modifying the administrative recommendation.
Yeah, I'd make that motion to adopt the administrative recommendation with the addition of eliminating the 4 and 6% thresholds.
Is there a second? Is the motion understood?
So how would you would still have like the positive case would stay home, right? Like the 5 day, optional. No, that's optional, never mind.
Yeah, I mean, I guess for me, it would be if you're positive, stay home for
Right.
the 5 days. I mean, wasn't that already the,
Yeah, that's referring to close contact.
so that wouldn't
I was
be
thinking
a
that was referring to positive, it's
change.
not.
Okay, so is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
We have a motion that's been made, a motion that's been seconded. Is there discussion?
I guess my only thought is, do we need to eliminate both 4 and 6? Do we eliminate 1, 4, but keep something between for another month or for whatever that time period is, 1 more before we would go virtual? And to the comment of either ripping the Band-Aid off or kind of that gradual approach that we've been taking.
I guess my only concern is I don't know if it's working or not, but to Jeff's point, like, at this point, we're not going, we haven't had a class go virtual since November. It's January, it's
But we
still.
were doing the same things, weren't we? 4 and 6% when we were hitting 15 for virtual? Or did something in there change that I'm not remembering?
No one else.
So what changed?
Well, I'm impressed that we're making it through the winter month. I mean, like, right now, it's,
6%.
we were lower, you know what I'm saying? We were at lower levels, whether it's not working, it wasn't working then, it is working now. I'm just nervous about why are we changing it up just for the sake of changing it up? Because it's working now, right now, we're not going virtual. Why change? It's January, doing it for another month. We've asked administration, they said it's not that much of a hardship for them to track, or I haven't, the teacher having to wear a mask at 4%. I don't know if that's, I haven't had a lot of staff telling me it's a hardship for them to have to wear the mask at 4%. I do many staff who are wearing it regardless.
I guess assuming that wasn't rhetorical, my thought for the change would be, because that's not the default position. And it's just, the reason to make the change, it sounds so similar to past meetings when we said, well, we know masks work. They don't seem to be working at schools that have been required. And then it was the vaccine, wait till we get the vaccine. And now there's no evidence that it's working at those schools. Why do they have more cases than us? And higher percentages of cases. And the vaccine's been available for 3 months. So, those were arguments for why we should do it. And we're past those points, and yet we're still doing it. Almost as if it's like, we're just gonna keep doing it. Like, it just, when does it end? How wrong do people have to be before we just say, okay, if you're sick, stay home. And we're just gonna go back to, if there was something happen, some nightmare scenario happens, we can deal with it then. But
Is that more difficult on administration to,
If
like we're talking
something-
about like in a classroom, which you've done before, in a classroom at a grade level, there was, the 8th grade, right, last year. And you guys just said, okay, well, we gotta stop this.
Because they hit the number.
There weren't there was no framework. That was just a decision. You guys noticed
Not
something.
the 6th grade this year, it was 8th grade.
Last year.
We were looking at that 20%.
Right, it was the
20%, yeah.
So I guess, is it easier having this framework versus last year in making that kind of a decision? You know what I'm asking?
I think, but, administration didn't bring forward, what you're talking about, we didn't bring forward a recommendation for.
What are you saying?
The 4 and 6% you're discussing.
Right,
So
you said
So we
nothing.
aren't, I know, because we aren't recommending it. Doesn't mean that the board can't go in a different direction. And you don't have to take our recommendations, and you can create your own recommendations, like that's fine. But so is it easier? That isn't how we utilize that thought process. It's what do we think is best for this time. And yeah.
Well,
Hopefully
so
that
are you
makes sense.
saying like in the summer, are you talking about then the recommendation you brought and then we went a different way? Is that
or the
what you're-
one 2 meetings ago, or
I'm not keeping track. I'm just saying, I'm not trying to do
I feel like it's a
specific
cryptic
piece.
answer. I don't.
No,
what
it's
you
not
mean by
cryptic.
the
I don't mean to be cryptic at
forest.
all. I'm just being honest that you're asking for an opinion that that, honestly, if I agreed with, we would have brought it forward. There's an honest answer.
Oh, to take away the 4 and the
Sure.
6.
Sure. I mean,
Even though last summer you came with nothing. At that point, there was a recommendation of nothing.
I think the 4, 6, and 15% has been here for a long time.
Well, the summer,
Yeah.
But in fairness, the original plan was prepared during a time which the CDC was recommending that kids go back to school without masks, as if COVID didn't exist.
It was a long time ago.
And
summer?
within days after our approval of that
that's
initial
right,
plan, the
that's right.
CDC reversed
Oh,
its
yeah.
guidance and said now masks are required.
So a lot has transpired.
Right.
A lot has transpired
Yeah.
in that time. So that's what I'm saying, like, administration isn't looking to see when did the board approve or disapprove
Right.
recommendations. It's the bottom line is every month administration looks to see how are things going, what's gonna keep us moving forward, what's gonna keep us staff in seats with students, and
Okay.
realizing that no recommendation we bring forward makes everyone happy.
And I guess, Jerry, my response to your question, what's the end game, right? I mean,
Same question I've had since August.
I appreciate that, because I share that same question. And I've said before that as we look to remove layers of mitigation, one of my goals has always been, and I've used the analogy of belts and suspenders, to make sure that as we remove one, there's still something in place to ensure that there's some level of layered mitigation. And from my perspective, that's not unreasonable in light of our responsibility to determine guidelines and policies that many have pointed out are inconsistent with the vast majority of medical professionals in the community, right? And we could debate all night as to the right side of who's on the right side of those debates and arguments. My own perspective relative to where we're at with the Omicron surge, as much as it appears to be coming down, that it doesn't seem unreasonable to me to maintain a layered targeted mitigation protocol that requires additional mitigation when cases are rising and takes them away when cases are following. That would be my own perspective. And when do they go away completely? When our data suggests that they're no longer affected by our own measurements.
Well, I mean, I don't think our data shows that it is affecting them.
Well, he did. I mean, Jeff said that at least if one thing, tracking this data gives us some insight as to whether or not we believe there is spread within the schools or not. It's a data point. It's
Right, I
it's
mean,
some
we can still
insight.
track.
you could still track
You can
it,
still
yeah.
track. I mean, this is like the meeting in the auditorium.
You
It's
could
like,
still track.
still track people out. I mean,
What would be the purpose of tracking it?
I don't know what the purpose of most of this is. I mean, seriously, I mean, we're doing these things that nobody's even here anymore. I mean, they're not even, there's like 6 people that send us emails that, say, we're fudging the numbers or they're never gonna change their view, clearly. So we're doing this to assuage who?
Well,
To
but I
protect
would
what?
disagree. We're not doing it to assuage anybody. It's what you just said about that layering.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and my team doesn't get those emails, so they wouldn't know. Well, I get those emails and you get those emails, but my team doesn't get those emails. And so the recommendations that we bring forward aren't based on.
Yeah.
I know where your recommendations are. I have no, issue with that. It's more just the wait till we get the vaccine, then we get the vaccine. Okay, we clear that hurdle. Oh, but let's keep doing it just because maybe it'll be, if we can, it's just everything points to either until somebody else tells us to, which is, I thought we were the ones that were supposed to be making decisions, or it's just COVID doesn't exist anymore.
And I think, are there other questions? Because I agree with you. We are responsible for making that decision. The 7 of us are responsible. We've got a motion on the table. The motion has been seconded. The motion is to remove the 4 and 6% mitigation measures. to accept the administrative recommendation relative to the 15%, to remove the 4 and the 6% mitigation measures, and to eliminate contact tracing. Is there any further discussion?
So I mean, I guess I just would like to your belt and suspenders. I mean, do we think we need to have 4 and 6? I guess that's my question. Does the board think we need to have?
Like just have one
We
versus
need
two?
to have a 4 and a 6 that are so close. I guess that's my question. On the 4%, I mean, basically the only thing with the 4% is that, you know, we're telling the teachers that they have to wear masks, where I don't know if at that point.
They could choose, would
I
be
don't
really the
know if,
difference, right?
you know, at this point, if that's something that, you know, we would have to do. And then it's, you know, kind of that masking in and out, where the 6% is the one that, you know, we kind of go to a more formalized, you know, students are doing the same thing as teachers. So I guess that would be my question is I don't know if we need the 4 and the 6. We've hit 4%, according to this 3 times. And it looks like I don't know if I can't tell at Kennedy if we actually hit 6% or we got right to 6% at one point, back right after the first of the year.
Yeah, individual classrooms hit 4% pretty easily at the elementary. That's the correct.
So I guess
grade level is different, yeah.
And when that happens at the elementary school, the cohorting is what? It says that cohorting will be utilized to reduce the interaction of different groups of students in the building. That likely not reverting back to 2020, 21 standards, but is there actual cohorting? What's the nature and extent of that cohorting?
Is that more in line with people being aware of it and starting to track, make sure people are staying in their groups, or what would that be? I'll let the principals talk about that.
Sure. We start. What we try to do is reduce the number of close contacts that are potentially occurring in the classroom, our seating, our partnerships, and our group sizes. We're conscious and aware of the amount of time that a child may travel to another classroom, work with another teacher. And we just try to put measures in place where we're minimizing, eliminating the carryover that would occur as a result of close contact. That would be the same.
So you kind of hear Kevin, he's a science group working with the lab partners together instead of switching partners. They then stay together.
That's happening at 4%.
Correct. And that's when we stopped, I think it was a couple months ago, we stopped sending the letter home to parents because it's really just impacting the student, or excuse me, the staff. So we internally tell the staff member their percentage.
Any further discussion? So I think, Steve, I would suggest that we vote on the motion before us that's been properly made and seconded. If there's no further discussion, depending on the nature of the outcome of that vote, you may want to propose a different alternative. So, all those in favor?
Oh, I mean, is it some?
At this point, the motion is to adopt the administrative recommendation as presented and eliminate the 4 and 6% transition protocols as currently included in the plan. Right, Kara? That's correct. The nature of the motion. Okay, all those in favor of the motion, aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed, aye.
We'll take a voice vote. Sean, how do you vote?
Wait, how am I
No.
saying?
In favor of the motion?
I'm gonna say no.
Okay.
No.
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 Opposed.
Motion fails. Is there another motion that anyone would like to make?
I will make the same motion in accepting the administration recommendation, but eliminating the 4%, but keeping the 6% mitigation factor.
Is there a second to that motion? I will second that motion. Is there any discussion?
I would still like to see the 15%. I'm fine with the 15% going away, maybe 20%. I guess I'm still at 20%.
But that's automatic, isn't it?
No? 20% is not automatic.
That's in the policy already, isn't it?
Oh, I don't believe.
It's not, to the best of my knowledge, it's not a board policy, but it is a district practice. And it has been practice at other districts, as I understand it, that you've worked in. And it would remain our practice. That's subject to the discretion of the superintendent in consultation with
leadership team. Yep.
Principals.
Yep, and their staff.
And that would remain in place, just as it's been.
Could you just clarify that, Carrie, the 20% you're talking about?
Oh, that if a grade level, if 20% of a grade level is out, it's always been our practice, to say we're getting rid of it, 15% are out, we're not going virtual. If it's easier for Jeff to set, if it's easier and administration wants to make the call classroom by classroom or grade by grade at 20%, I guess I was just suggesting, I understand the recommendation not to have 15% anymore. I know it's causing stress, because it is that number. I guess I've just been so used to 20% for so long, but if, I guess it has always been policy, and it wasn't that common. As we said, that we haven't had any classes go virtual since November, and, we're eliminating it, but it really hasn't been an issue since November.
So are you saying it for this year or for future?
Oh, well, I mean, I would assume
So instead of eliminating the 15.
for this year, this is this year's school plan.
Yes, that's why I just wanted to say.
Yeah, for this year's school plan. I mean, next year, I don't know, the next, big thing that hits, I don't know if I would say 20%.
So you're saying 20% virtual, right?
Yeah.
Okay, instead of eliminating the 15% completely.
Correct.
Going virtual. Okay. I get that. I agree with that.
I was just gonna, that would be my only thing
That makes
to your
sense to me.
motion. Raising the threshold it takes to go virtual. But that at some point we do go virtual. Just
Why
because,
change it from how it was before?
why raise the number?
No,
Codifying it, right? I mean, we
like the
don't-
practice is already what you're.
The reason why it's not a good idea, from my opinion, the reason why it's not a good idea to have that in policy is because we can get to 20, so there's 2 kids in a class right now. So you can say, well, is there any angst? Yeah, there's angst among those other 18 families who are like, if one more kid gets sick, we're going virtual for 5 days, even though those other 2 kids could be coming back tomorrow. So if we say it's policy, then when we get to 20%, we have to go there.
Yeah.
But if we say it's practice, then we can look to see, okay, we hit 20%, but 15% of those kids are coming back tomorrow. This isn't really, that isn't really the 20, it might be the letter of the law, but it's not the spirit of it. And I think that's why it's practice to be able to then look to see, are we getting to the point, which is where we got to last year with the middle school, where we said the amount of kids that are out, it's not conducive to staff to teach. And they're not going to be back in time. We need to go virtual for a couple of days, get them out of our system, get them away from each other, and put a pause on it. And so that's what we made there. And so having a practice is much easier than policy, because people are watching very closely to see, am I following policy on everything that we do? And when it's policy and the board's approved it, we do follow policy.
I totally support that.
Yeah, I do too.
We voted,
Right. That's the difference between letter and meaning, right? That's what we'll be able to interpret that.
Additional discussion regarding Steve's motion that I seconded, which is to adopt the administrative recommendation as presented and eliminate the mitigation measures at 4%.
I'm curious when, again, what's the new end game? I mean, just at least so it's recorded, I can go back and bring it up again. When is it then? I mean,
From our leadership team's perspective, it was if we follow our data for another month, that we'd come back with a different recommendation.
yeah, I agreed with the recommendation.
That was our discussion. That was our discussion, was like, let's, take this piece away, see what that does. If we're in a good spot, then we come back next month with saying, here's where we are. We're heading into basically March at that point.
I mean, I'd go back to July's recommendation, and which is why I supported that. And we wouldn't, I feel like had we just stuck to that, we wouldn't be doing any of this, which was the administration's recommendation had we not changed it. But since we keep changing it, and the goalpost is frantically moving, what now would we suggest would be the end?
Jerry, submit, that's what we're doing right now. What now? So that's what we're
6
doing
until,
right now. Right? And that's what we're called to do.
Yes.
And I understand your position, and I appreciate your position, but what we're called to do is what we're doing right now. And the board, by a majority vote, will determine the end game. And you've heard administration share their perspective regarding what they'd like and the reason for the recommendation that they made this evening. So, I mean, I know your frustration, but this is.
Well, I mean, nobody even explains, nobody even says, here's why Shorewood has so many cases, here's why Whitefish Bay has so many, even though they're doing our 6% level all the time. Like, we're just throwing away any evidence and just saying, I don't really even hear why we're doing it, just because we have been, so let's just keep doing it, I guess.
My response to that would be Shorewood's data is Shorewood's data. Our data is our data. Administration is saying that there's some value to tracking the data that we have and using the data to determine whether or not there's indicia of spread.
No, I mean, I appreciate that you're at least explaining.
Yeah, okay.
And I think those are different air handling systems. Those are older buildings. I mean, they've passed referendums to upgrade some things that we've been able to do. I think that's the study that I would love to see done when this is over, is like what factors that people do, and then what are some of these things that I think the air handling unit piece and MERV 13 filters are a bigger deal. But that's an opinion. And I know other districts who you mentioned have gone through a referendum and haven't had the opportunity to upgrade those facilities or running the process of it.
Any further discussion?
So the removing the 4% removes the cohorting that we talked about earlier. It removes the masks leaving and entering, which I think is reasonable. I don't think that's going to be a cause for spread. So I think that layer.
And the adults were in.
And the adults, I mean, they can if they want. That's their choice. They probably are right now, if they're concerned. So I'm okay with that.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, then we'll call the motion. All those in favor of the motion, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Any opposition? Take a voice vote?
Yes.
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 Motion passes. Any additional motions or thoughts regarding the 2021-22 school year plan for this evening? Right, as always, thank you to the administration for the time and the effort that they put into evaluating the plan and its options, and most importantly for executing the plan, and a plan that is designed to do our best to stay safe, to stay open. Thanks to all of the board members as well, as they contemplated each of the individual items that were presented this evening, their own thoughts and perspectives relative to this matter. The discussion, the ideas and the thoughts bring about the best results possible. So I appreciate the discussion and the efforts that went in to get to this point. So we have an adopted update to our plan, right? The elimination of contact tracing. There will be, because that was one of the questions that came out in one of the emails, a letter that will still go home, right? Notifying of positive cases. It won't be targeted contact tracing.
Okay.
And we will maintain the transitional protocols at the 6% level. All right. Thank you all. Then on to the personnel report.
Personnel, we just have an informational piece for the board that we have a new library aide at John Long Middle School, Mary Nuez Ursh, who has started over at John Long Middle School. So just as an FYI for the board on our support staff.
Approval of open enrollment seats, item F.
Get my Laura coming up to talk to us about open enrollment for next year.
The district had opened up 78 open enrollment seats, and we enrolled 43 new students to the district this year. In addition, we had 3 students who were previous residents, moved out of the district, and they continued with us as tuition waiver students. At the current moment, we have 165 open enrolled in students, and we have 105 open enrolled out students for a net gain of 60 students. And then when we look at our current number of students and we kind of roll them up to next year and take into consideration some additional students that we typically pick up in those transition years to either 6th grade or to 9th grade, we are recommending that you open up 87 seats for next school year.
Any questions?
The first grade, is that we're talking about the kindergarten this year, right then?
Yep.
Any concerns with that? I mean, I know it's only 2, but we also know that's a high number this year.
The reason that we do put a couple of seats in there is for when we have whole families that come to our
Okay.
district. It would not be good if like 2 out of their 3 students were accepted, but not the 3rd. So that's why we open up like 1 seat per grade level, just so that when we do have entire families come, they have the option.
We are approaching that as a bubble classroom as well. So, but there is a fine line then between, if we had too many, then you'll have a bubble classroom all the way through 5th grade. So it's 4th, 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, we look to say larger class sizes are, something that we have in our guidelines to follow. But the kindergarten one is one that you don't know 4K to 5K. That was the most we've ever seen come from 4K to 5K last year. And so, that just blossomed in August, which is why we didn't add another section, but we added an extra adult into each one of those classrooms. So that's part of our discussion as well, is that we're internally looking at it as well as that bubble. And that's why you see, Craig showed you the Kennedy thing, and that's why you'll see more in 3rd and 4th grade, because that's true at Woodview as well, as it does see, there are some grade levels that have less kids in it, but there are some that have a lot of kids in it.
Any additional questions? Hearing none, entertain a motion to adopt the administrative recommendation to approve the 87 seats as indicated in the table and all tuition waivers for the 2022-2023 school year.
So moved.
Second. Jeff, the open enroll out Northern Ozaki, is that river, that school from a couple years ago, that new,
River Edge?
yeah, is that fall under that, or?
I don't think so.
I thought that was the virtual piece. Remember we looked at that last year?
Because it was, yeah, it went up.
I believe it was the virtual piece, but we can find that out for you exactly, because you ran those numbers last year. Remember that, Rick?
That's why I couldn't remember, but I knew it came
was
up.
the virtual piece, and we'll get the board that information though, because I remember you looked at that last year, exactly what they went.
Yeah, I got mentioned, I just couldn't remember.
Yep, good question.
Any additional questions? All those in favor of the motion, aye. Aye. Opposed? And it passes. 2022-2023 school year calendar.
Yes, we have a calendar that we're bringing to the board that is similar to our 21-22 calendar. We've looked at this multiple times as a leadership team. We presented to some teacher leaders, took some feedback from them as well. You can see the following features of 173 elementary student days, 177 secondary student days, 3 teacher professional development, 612 virtual learning days in the first semester, 190 teacher days. So over the last couple of years, we've seen that number go down, and this calendar brings that up to 190 teacher days. Similar to what we've done the last couple of years, we'll have a different first day of school because of Great Start conferences, as well as what they're doing at each of their buildings to welcome new students and transition them successfully to their buildings. And then spring break is March 27th through 31st. That's the agreement amongst our area schools based on when Easter is. So you'll notice that we've almost mirrored our first semester piece by having those virtual days for 4K through, no school for 4K through 5th grade, but virtual learning 6th through 12th. And the reason for that is that we'd surveyed our staff earlier about we're using these days now as PD opportunities with staff instead of pulling teachers out of the classroom and trying to get subs. We're having such a hard time getting fill rates for subs that we've either tried to build meetings after school, which causes then more stress on staff, or trying to do more things, on their own time or virtually, and so trying to limit the amount of subs that we need. This will allow that to occur. It will allow curriculum work to continue, whether it's looking at new textbooks, whether it's reviewing the curriculum that we have, all those pieces that get brought to our curriculum committee. But those days allow us to continue that. That's been well received by staff, and has still provided opportunities for our students at the secondary level to accomplish a task that the teachers have assigned or get individual help from those teachers. But we believe going into next year, we're still going to be at a spot where substitutes are going to be an issue. We're still going to need building subs. And the labor market, we don't believe will have changed to that point. And so keeping those days are something that administration feels strongly about in order to make sure that we continue to have opportunities for staff to collaborate and allow us to move forward with important decisions as we move forward. So you'll see other days as we move through, whether it's spring break, the Easter break on the 7th and the 10th, where the 7th is no school, Easter break, but then the staff work on that day because that's the end of the quarter. So there are some pieces that go with that as well, that maybe an extended break for students out of school, and staff have a day off, but then they also have opportunities to get records done, which allows us to have time for the last day of school to be June 9th, and then staff's last day would be June 13th. So 12th and 13th would be PD. So it gives us additional time for, if we were to have a snow day, there's more than a day of instructional hours because we have that late start at the high school. That takes up some of our time that we have to credit towards the DPI minimum hours. So that continues all of that, calculating it appropriately as we should be. But there's still additional time built in for if there ever was an issue, and we've talked about that in the past, that the first snow day that we have, that we would have it be a snow day, and then from there, we would try and have virtual learning for our secondary students, but we've built in, there's additional time in the calendar as well for that.
So in all cases, we're hitting the hours requirements.
Yes.
Even though, back in the olden days, when there was collective bargaining, those student days were generally around 180, if memory serves.
Yeah, because it wasn't hours, it was days.
Days.
Yeah,
Right.
so if you did that's why you had a lot of half days, because a half day
Right.
counted for a day.
So in all cases here, we're hitting
Correct,
by
yes.
far and away, I would imagine, still at the elementary level, the hours
Yes.
requirements.
Yes,
Yeah,
all of we are very good with all of the minimal requirements of DPI.
Okay.
So Jeff, the virtual day in September, there's one in September, but not October. Just as far as having a virtual day that early in the school year.
Yep. So you're wondering
Just kind of the thought.
why so early?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what we did appreciate was the opportunity to have staff collaborate that early in the year, because you're a couple weeks in, and how are things going? What have we done so that we don't get all the way into October before we have a discussion? We're a month in, and students we're 6 weeks in, and we're past progress reporting time for the high school and for the secondary students that goes with it, and an opportunity for staff to collaborate on how it's going. What are some of those pieces that if we do need to make a change, I think it might have been that early that we were looking at adding building subs this year. I think we started off with one mindset and that transitioned to another. Is the virtual learning going to be as rich, if that's what you're asking, as it might be later on in the year? That's definitely a possibility, but I would say after 2 weeks of being in a classroom, the teachers should have no problem having assignments that are able to be done virtually, or they're in the midst of a project that they can continue working on.
Okay. I mean, part of me doesn't mind having it that early from the standpoint of making sure that you have your virtual bugs all worked out as well.
Helps us too.
Okay.
Any additional questions? Okay, then I'd look for a motion to approve the recommended 2022-2023 school year calendar as presented.
So moved. Second.
Last chance for discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And it passes. 2021-22 second quarter budget report.
Yes, we have the.
Hard to say.
Yeah, it's not easy. So here's where each quarter we compare this year's activity against the budget versus last year's activity to that point versus what the total activity was for last year. And we have some similar items that we had in the first quarter budget report for Fund 10 non-capital objects. Those are primarily textbooks and tech supplies that had been purchased earlier this year than last year, which is why it's running ahead of last year. For capital objects in Fund 10, simply similar to the first quarter, the timing of our purchases are just going to be later than they were last year. And then for Fund 10 and 27, the other objects category, this showed up in our first quarter report. It will again show up in our third quarter report, and these have to do with adjusting entries related to Medicaid that our auditor had us put into last year's budget. And then finally, the non-capital objects in Fund 27, they typically do, we typically come under budget. So even though our spending is fairly similar to last year, it looks like a lower percentage, mainly because it is. What that means is we're tracking to be under budget again this year on that piece. And that is the second quarter budget report, an information only item. If there are any questions, I can take them.
Questions for Topher? Thank you. Item number, letter I, state assessments overview and approval of parent opt-out.
I'll use this mic since I set it up every month and you never get a chance. Every year, we come to the board to get approval for the opt-out process. The way we do our state testing by state law at grades 4, 8, and then I believe 9 up through 11, that if a parent requests in writing, they're automatically opted out. In between grades, in grades 5, 6, and 7, we like to follow the procedure that is suggested by DPI to get approval by the board annually to allow parents to opt out of the test via a written letter to their principal. And we accept emails too as written. Just a little background, last year we had our highest number of opt-outs. We were at about 1.5% of our tested students. So it was about 21 students opted out. That still was much lower than what happened at other districts. I know many districts at CISA 1 that were even closer, to 10, 15% opt out. And part of it was that those schools were virtual. We were in session. We were not allowed to offer any of those tests virtually. So we were in a good position to provide for the testing last year because of being in person. So we anticipate probably that number potentially going down this year. And also remember that the opt-out process does not penalize the district at all in any way on the state report card. Another thing that's different this year, that they're not extending the test windows an extra 2 weeks like they did last year. We're back to a standard window. And then another thing that's different is more high school students are opting to take the ACT online. We have at this point 23 students who've signed up to take the ACT online. Last year we had only one student. That was the first year they offered it. So that is a change from the past, but other than that, we're kind of back to where we were in terms of our spring assessments back in 2019. So the recommendation that we have, and I always forget every year if someone has to make a motion for this, but we do have in there our recommendation for the board to allow our parents at those in-between grades to opt out of these state assessments for this year.
Any questions for Rick? Thank you. Entertain a motion to adopt the administrative recommendation regarding approval of written parental requests for testing opt-out at all tested grade levels.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Oh, second.
Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and it passes. Thank you, Rick. All right, then we are at item J. Just make sure. The Board of Education will convene in closed session to consider 1, performance-related data of the superintendent, and 2, administrator employment and compensation. This is in accordance with Wisconsin State Statutes 19.85, Section 1, Sub C. Do we have a motion to adjourn into closed session?
So moved.
Second.
We'll take a roll call vote.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Yes.
And yes, we are in closed. Thank you.